Thank you so much for joining us on WLTX Plus. Right now, we are breaking down a controversial proposal making its way across the Palmetto State. State legislators are once again trying to help parents pay for private schools. Christy Calcagno breaks down the new proposal that is gaining momentum at the State House and talked to community members that would be impacted the most.
Well, families hoping to use state money to send their students to a private school now have two options of how the program may begin. Both the House and the Senate each passed their own version of an educational scholarship account bill that would allow families to use state money for private schools. So let's go ahead and break it down. First, we have the Senate version. Scholarships will be about $7,500 from the South Carolina Education Lottery Fund, and the money will be distributed by the Department of Education. Then we have the House. Students would get about $6,000 from the general fund revenue, like state income taxes and sales tax revenue, and a trustee appointed by the Department of Education will distribute this money. Now, both of these versions would give money to 10,000 students for the first year and 15,000 for the second year.
90% of South Carolinians have grown up going to public schools, and I think 90% of those families expect that they're going to send their kids there. And the state, or I should say a portion of the state and the legislature just keeps trying to force this issue down the throat.
For years, securing the funds for the voucher program has been an uphill battle at the State House, despite strong support from Republican state lawmakers. 2 times in the last 4 years, a similar bill has moved through the ranks, but was deemed unconstitutional. But why? I spoke with USC professor Derek Black about the history of public and private schools in our state.
We didn't have public schools in the state of South Carolina in 1865, 1866. And we decided the way to rebuild democracy in the state of South Carolina was to have a public education system and to grow it and make sure it served every kid in the state and to make sure no one could stick their hands in the piggy bank. That's the #1 priority for democracy, not just in South Carolina, across the United States.
But here's the problem. The piggy bank isn't as full as it used to be. Lottery revenue has fallen in recent years. According to the State Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, lottery revenue dropped from $612 million during the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year to an estimated $538 million during the 2024-2025 fiscal year. For the 2025 to 2026 fiscal year, it's predicted to be even less, $503 million.
They're putting a permanent program that's bigger, more expensive, and covers more students than last year's program ever thought about covering.
So who would benefit from the money if this is passed? Well, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, most families here in South Carolina. You see, the scholarships would be available to households that make below 300% of the poverty level in the first year, and it'll be 400% the second year. That's about $125,000 for a family of 4. And again, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income for a family of 4 here in the Palmetto State, you can see it right here, around $90,000 in 2022. Now, proponents of this bill, like we have Joe Gerald, says that the plan would allow South Carolina families to select an education option that best meets their child's needs. Joe's 10-year-old great-grandson, Cale, attended Kershaw County Public Schools, but she decided to switch him to Cornerstone Christian School in Camden.
My main concern is that he gets a good education. This has been such a blessing. This school's been such a blessing. So I'm hoping and praying that they'll reverse the decision.
Back in 2023, the legislature passed the South Carolina Education Scholarship Trust Fund Act. That called for allotting public funds in the state budget to help parents pay to send students to private schools. The program would have provided $6,000 to thousands of low-income families to be spent on tuition and fees at any given institution.
They are a wonderful class, they really are.
Joe qualified for that money and decided to send Cale to private school.
They are using Chromebooks in public school. And so that's the teacher in public school. And when it was the end of last school year, and they were promoting him on up to the next grade, I knew he was not ready. And so I just did not want him to fall any further behind. So I started looking into the private schools. I was so impressed with this school. And he is thriving, absolutely thriving compared to what he was in public school.
But the state Supreme Court struck down the law in September last year, just as the first round of beneficiaries were beginning the school year.
I was devastated. We've had some private donors come forward, and I'm hoping that will continue or either they'll reverse this at the state level.
But there will be challenges. Opponents worry the Senate bill would take money away from traditional public schools by using money from the South Carolina Education Lottery Fund. In fact, according to their website, lottery revenue has been used to provide technology equipment and resources to K-12 schools and help purchase things like school buses, on top of $6 billion in scholarships and grants.
I feel like most private school kids maybe wouldn't need that voucher as much as public schools.
We sat down with Kayla Oliver, who received money from the South Carolina Education Lottery Fund. The money, she says, although not even enough to help her with all of her expenses, is crucial to continuing her education.
Kind of catch-22. It's like, yeah, I need it and you need it, and there's only so much money that they're giving out. So I think it's good. I think that a lot of people will benefit from it, but I think public schools might need it just a little bit more than a private school.
Catch-22 seems to be the theme among the students I spoke with. Here's Jade Jackson, a high school junior at a private school in Camden.
Well, I hate that there's such a my kid, your kid division. I hate that there's such a public school, private school division. Why we couldn't figure out a way to divide it equally so it benefits everyone, if that makes sense.
But equality in this bill is hard to come by, and the overall takeaway from Professor Black, why now and why again?
You know, if you got a kid at any of the schools in Columbia, you know that we're short on Spanish teachers. You know that we're short on guidance. You know, we could just go down the list. You know there's enormous turnover. You know that we're recruiting overseas, right, to try to bring folks here. And again, you know, my question is the same one it was before, like, why aren't those things the priority instead of these?
These different bills now mean that lawmakers are headed to a conference committee to work out the differences. In studio, I'm Christy Calcagno for News 19 WLTX.
If the two chambers are able to come to an agreement, the final product will most likely end up in front of the state Supreme Court to see if it considers the program constitutional. Now, we have covered this story from the very beginning when it was first discussed between state lawmakers. A full breakdown of these two proposals is on our website right now. And we thank you so much for joining us on WLTX Plus. And remember, you can always catch us anytime, both on air and online at WLTX.com.